I want to start by saying, though, you don't need a co-founder, especially from 2025 and beyond, for every idea. I actually think because of the rise of artificial intelligence tools and technology, it's the golden era for the solopreneur and just doing stuff on your own. And of course, after you have a bit of runway of experience, revenue or whatnot, you might develop and grow a team. So you kind of start as a solo founder, solopreneur, and then you build a team around it. But it doesn't mean that you need a co-founder from day one. So I'll start with the first thought. The first thought around this is, and it's off the back of me speaking to a lot of venture capital firms and partners out there around funding and whatnot. And there's a video there, if you're interested, I'll put the link in the description, what they think about funding in 2025 and beyond for solo founders, is that one thing that came up during those discussions is when they see a new startup venture or idea, and there are co-founders, they always like to do a bit of due diligence to make sure it wasn't a shotgun co-founder wedding, because I do feel a lot of founders out there rush into that partnership very quickly, whether they meet someone at a networking event, whether they've only kind of interacted with them a handful of times, and then just almost, figuratively, but quite representative of the relationship, just marry up to start this venture and business idea. And they look into that very diligently because there's a very high failure rate to startups linked to the co-founders not getting along, whether it be in the first year, second year, or third year. There's some sort of mishmash or disagreement, or someone decides they don't want to do it anymore, and it's structured in a way where it just doesn't survive thereafter. So it's something to really consider, because even if you're thinking about finding a co-founder, but you don't really need one, you're just doing it for the sake of it, and you rush the process just so that you've got someone that you think would be good to keep you liable and, accountable for all of the stuff that you do, may not be in your best interest, especially if you might be looking for seed funding or raising some capital early on, because people kind of look at it and go, hey, is this really going to work? Is this match going to work? Especially if there isn't an element of history there. Sure, as you develop and it's like your second and third business, or you've got a relatively strong track record behind each of you as individuals, as co-founders, it can kind of be waived, and they're like, okay, these are adults that are trying to get shit done. And, there's a Harvard Business Review study that shows that entrepreneurs in their mid to late 40s are the most successful ones statistically as well, which kind of makes sense. So less if you're on that edge of the spectrum, I guess. But if you're a young founder, it's your first business, don't just find a co-founder for the sake of doing it. It actually could look bad, right, on you. The second one is, if you do find a co-founder and you're determined to do it, please try and find someone that complements your skill set. Like, for example, for me, I'm hot air. I'm a bit of a sales guy when it comes to product offerings whenever we'd start something. The hype man. My co-founder for our first startup TwoSpace, the one that hit the $10 million valuation. If you're interested in that story, you can kind of watch the rise and fall of that one on my channel. He was a developer and he was very operationally focused. So we kind of got along really well and complemented one another that way. In hindsight, the third co-founder that we brought on, it would have been amazing to bring someone on with a marketing or a storytelling and branding angle, because that's something that would have really served us well back then, right? So it's all about thinking about who you can bring on that complements your skill sets. Because if I started a business and I just brought on another salesperson, right, as the two individuals that's going to kind of start something off the ground, I don't think it would really work well. In fact, I think we'd clash more than anything rather than help one another. Doesn't mean you don't bring more people with your skill set later down the track, but if this is very early on and you're just dipping into sweat equity, you're just doing it yourselves, try and find someone that kind of complements your skill set. And I guess the third point is to kind of support the saying that my wife shared, you may not need a co-founder, but an idea needs a village of people. Are you sure that scratch that you're trying to itch will be fixed by finding a co-founder? There are a variety of ways that you can feel like you're involved with someone, or you're not as lonely, because loneliness is a big thing as an entrepreneur and as a founder, that you can surround yourself with people without having to give them half your company away. Like, the obvious stuff is like going to networking events and meeting people, which, as I kind of got older and went further down my entrepreneurial journey, found to be a complete waste of time. If you do that stuff to re-energize because you're extroverted as an individual, like you get energy from that stuff, totally fine. But I wouldn't go to those things thinking that you're going to necessarily find your next deal or find your next strategic partnership or anything like that. you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment, probably wasting a lot of time allocating that as an actual resource to develop your company. I find that good, honest, hard work and, developing your own personal brand in smarter ways, that's how you're going to kind of develop your network, build it and they will come to a degree. Working from co-working spaces is an obvious one because it's less insert yourself into, a community that might work for you, might not, because a lot of them could be a bit culty. But it's more about, just surround yourself with other people that's working, right? Those are the two obvious ones, which kind of didn't really work for me. The one that I would say that did work for me, which could work for you, which is almost like a bit of a cheat code and hack to feel like you've got a co-founder, is if you find someone who, obviously isn't part of your company, but you could strategically align to and they've got their own business or they're part of another company and you can work on a really important project together, right? So not necessarily within your business, but you work on a strategic project that both your businesses can work on. And it's a really important one. It almost feels like you got a co-founder, right? Because you're working with them really hard. You're developing something. You're working towards a shared goal. And, that could scratch the itch. Because I do that even to this day, not in a startup, but within a corporate environment. I've got a variety of really smart colleagues within my business. We're growing our team, et cetera, et cetera. But there's, projects that I work on that, at 8 to 12 months at a time, very large projects, which are worth, 10, 12 million dollars a piece, that it feels like I'm almost working with a business partner, whereas they're working for another company, but it kind of scratches that itch. I think that's a bit of a smart way to feel like you've got someone that you're paired up with without having to go down the co-founder route. That's just a bit of a thought. And, I guess like, key stakeholders and advisors are always great, but don't go around throwing that equity about just to anyone that thinks that will give you advice. Because I really feel like unless they're strategically aligned with you and have something to offer without sounding too transactional, meaning, they've got, not necessarily contacts. Contacts are wish-wash, so that doesn't really materialize into anything, but maybe supply chains or products or whatever that you can kind of dip into. Those are always great so that you feel like you've got someone in your corner. But that's the village kind of analogy that my wife was getting to that I think is really important. And if you actually go down the co-founder route, please make sure you have those upfront conversations around vesting schedules and co-founder agreements. A lot of people are a bit too scared to have that conversation because they feel like it's almost like a prenuptial agreement when you get married, which I totally get. But it's not marriage, it's a business. Businesses thrive and die all the time. It's just professionalism and it's a courtesy. If you actually have that conversation up front, you'd be surprised your co-founder probably will respect you more because it's protecting them as well. You can vest it across a schedule where the shares that you unlock for them, the equity, happens over a 3-year period. So it kind of lets both of you know that you're not going to go all in on this for a year and then get bored and then move on. Right, so please consider that. So those are just a couple of thoughts around the co-founder angle. Whichever direction you go, at the end of the day, it really comes down to you as an individual. And, are you passionate about your idea or are you driven about your idea? Right? Maybe not passionate, because passion is good when it's good, but it sucks when it sucks. It pulls you down because it's an emotion, right? How driven are you? Because the best ideas out there sometimes don't transpire because the founders don't stick it out. They think it's going to happen within a year or 2 or 3. Or they look at a bunch of these infographics about other startups that have succeeded across a shorter period of time than they have, and then they give up. Sometimes it's just around sticking around so that the market is at the right place for you to kind of push your idea and product offering, and you're at the right place, maybe as an individual, because you've grown and developed a lot. So hopefully that's helpful. And if you watch this before the new year, Happy New Year, and I'll speak to you again soon.